The concept of laziness itself, what is it? And how does laziness differ from fatigue or lack of energy?
Personally, for me, laziness is more of a signal that your talent isn't being used. In other words, it's a situation where you have your natural gifts and talents. You have a certain vision. You have some ideas. You have some inspiration. But it's not being used right now. It doesn't affect your activities in any way. And for example, you were supposed to be, let's say, a writer, an artist, some kind of dancer, a volunteer, or someone else. But instead, you work as an accountant. And in this situation, everything related to your accounting work can cause you to feel a certain laziness, a certain resistance, procrastination, a state where you hate the day, hate the alarm clock, hate the office. So for me, laziness is a signal that your talent isn't being used. On the other hand, when we talk about fatigue and burnout, it can happen even when you're doing what you love. For example, I like public speaking, I like creating content, I like writing various texts, working on different courses and seminars, and preparing my public speeches. But despite all that, if I were to do this every day, if I were to give, for example, several public speeches every day, I would literally burn out in a few days. If I were to do these kinds of broadcasts, like the recordings we're making now, if I did this, for example, every day, you would burn out very quickly. So you can be doing what you love, but if you don't take breaks, if you don't have a certain comfortable rhythm, then it leads to a point where even in your favorite activity, you can experience a state of burnout, a state of apathy, a state of internal resistance, where you don't feel like doing anything. So on one hand, laziness can indicate that I'm not doing the right thing at all, and I'm not in the right stream at all. And on the other hand, even when I am in that stream, I still, if I don't take breaks and recharge, if I don't have a comfortable work rhythm, then I can experience burnout and fatigue, even while doing what I love.
And is laziness specifically connected to a person's emotional state? I mean, with these experiences, well-being, with the circumstances that surround you, but specifically on an emotional level.
Of course. Because any action we want to take is meant to give us something. For example, if a person has some financial debt, they've gotten into some loans, borrowed from people, from banks, or God forbid, started borrowing money from some microfinance organizations, then for them, everything related to their work can be devalued. Why? Even if they're doing what they love. Because if, for example, a person has a debt of, say, 50 or 100,000 hryvnias, and they understand that the lion's share of what they earn, they have to give away as interest, the principal of the loan, or something else. Their motivation to earn that money can be very low because they understand that this money is already devalued for them by the fact that they have to give it away. Meaning, I haven't even earned it yet, but even if I make the effort and earn that money, I'll still need to take it to some terminal, put it in, and that's it. It's gone to the account of some company I borrowed it from. So, the emotional state, the emotional, so to speak, after effect of any action, it has a very direct meaning. When a person wants to go on vacation, right, like before the war, there were planes. We could travel abroad. Men could. And when you, for example, wake up in the morning at 4 or 5 o'clock, you have a flight, you can go somewhere. At that moment, you don't feel lazy, for example, to wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning, because this trip gives you certain emotions. You understand that you want to go there, meaning it has a certain emotional coloring. But if, for example, a person tries to wake up at 4 in the morning and sets 10 alarms for themselves, in order to go for a run, well, there might not be such an emotional coloring here, and the person might do it for a day or two and then stop doing it altogether. Thus, the emotions that are behind the action we take directly affect the level of our resistance and laziness that we face.
But at the same time, I think that very often, laziness is a consequence of our habits and a consequence, in principle, of our lifestyle. What specific negative habits can you name, and how do we begin to lay the foundation within ourselves for being lazy?
I think that it's not so much a habit, perhaps, but a certain worldview where I don't ask myself difficult questions. Well, let's say I work at some job. I have an income of 15,000 hryvnias. And at that moment, I realized that overall, my life isn't really that bad. It has some good things. I probably have a place to live. I might even have a car. I had some people in my circle, like friends, some acquaintances, maybe even a loved one. And in general, it seems like it's not a bad life. But when I look at it honestly, I realize that fundamentally, nothing is happening. I just go to work, just earn money, just give this money away for the apartment, for gas, for groceries. And so a person, in principle, very often doesn't ask themselves very difficult questions. Am I really happy? And would I want to continue this kind of life in the future? Like, would I want the next 10, 15, 20 years to be more or less the same as the last year, 2 or 3 have been? Am I fulfilling my own talents? Am I fulfilling my own calling? And am I using my own potential 100%? Even if it's not 100, at least 10 to 15%. Am I using what I have? And the fact that we often don't ask ourselves such difficult questions leads to us going on autopilot. We, so to speak, go with the flow of this life. And at some point, we completely stop liking this life. And at that moment, a person thinks, I'm so lazy, I can't make myself do it. I can't start working on my body or develop myself. I don't want to go to these courses to study. I don't want to learn a foreign language. I don't want this and I don't want that. I'm such a lazy person. Actually, the problem isn't laziness. The problem is that you are in a completely different life scenario, and it could have been radically different. If you were doing the right things, if you ask yourself, am I happy? Does what I do matter? Am I bearing my own abilities, bearing my own gifts and talents in the ground? And can I actually really use what I have? Am I helping anyone? Do I have the feeling that I'm living life to the fullest, fulfilling my own calling? Most people don't ask themselves these questions. And because we don't ask ourselves this question, we live a life that we don't like. And in that, we constantly encounter laziness, resistance, apathy, and a state close to depression. But as soon as a person starts asking themselves the right questions, their life changes. So I think that our society will change radically when teachers in schools start giving good grades, not for the right answers, but for the right questions. So if that ever happens, I think that in general, people's lives will be radically different.
And in your life, have you ever experienced laziness, or those moments when you felt like just lying on the bed like a kitten and that's all? What steps did you take to practically, work through it?
I experience this state periodically. And maybe once a month, I have a lazy day, as I call it, a slacker's day, when I can, watch Netflix all day, or eat some not so good food, order pizza a couple of times, watch a lot of YouTube. So I have those lazy days. And I think for many people, one way or another, that moment builds up when you just want to do nothing. The main thing here is when we face this, is it a one-time thing? A moment when I felt I needed a rest, I needed to, laze around for a few hours on the couch? Or is it a state where every day I have to force myself to move? A state where every day I face resistance? A state where every day I hate this commute to work, this job, these people? So if it's a permanent, constant, daily state, that means that on a larger scale, you're doing something wrong in your life. And so now I can say that I'm in a phase of my life where I like 90% of what I do. It inspires me. I see meaning in it. I understand how many people we help. And so now, for me, my life is filled with a very deep meaning and purpose. And when I feel moments of such, laziness that you're talking about, I understand that maybe I need to give myself a rest. I need to take a certain pause, just to reboot. Because even when you're doing what you love, but you don't take smart breaks, you can burn out. You can get into a state where you don't want anything anymore. Friends, if you want to develop discipline in practice, if you want to learn how to set goals for yourself, achieve them, and develop the right habits, and not be in a life where you're constantly rolling back, you promised yourself something. That's it, I'll do it, I'll learn English, I'll exercise, I'll eat right, I'll go to bed on time, and then you realize I'm rolling back again. I'm back to my usual rhythm of life. If you understand that you're tired of running in such a vicious circle and feeling guilty that you're not living as brightly, as effectively, and as productively as you could, I invite you to take our self-discipline program. It'll be 30 days that will have a very strong impact on your entire quality of life. You will see how the results will change very quickly. You will find the details of this program under this video.
And what about a habit like putting things off for later? If it's done intentionally, it's called procrastination. Is this really a manifestation of laziness, or is it perhaps some other signal our body is giving us?
Procrastination and laziness, I would separate them because sometimes laziness can be about the fact that in principle, I understand that I need to do this task, but I don't want to do it. That can be about laziness. But when I understand that I need to do it, and in principle, I even want to do it, but I want to do it at the last moment because I like what I'm doing now more. So in general, I'm not against this task, this assignment. But, well, specifically, it's convenient for me to prepare a presentation 20 minutes before a speech. It's convenient for me to prepare questions 15 minutes before the broadcast starts. It's convenient for me to think about what I'll wear 8 minutes before I leave the house. So very often, procrastination is a consequence of the fact that we don't want to, so to speak, plan ahead. That is, in principle, we just don't have the habit of preparing for something very thoroughly. Because people who are prone to, so to speak, procrastination often are people who are used to just putting themselves in a situation where, okay, now there's a deadline. And with this deadline, that's it. I'll definitely do it. I know for sure that that's it. Well, I'll definitely do it. And so it's just a certain lifestyle. But on the other hand, I've read the biographies of many people who are good public speakers. And they always said that their best performances were the ones they prepared in advance. The best books are written by people who might write in a burst of inspiration, so to speak, but then they could spend years editing those texts. My favorite writer is Remarque. I read in his biography that he could write a novel in 6 months and then spend 2.5, 3 years editing it. So an already existing novel, he could change words, endings, suffixes, prefixes. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of work. It's more than even writing the novel itself. And so when we understand that our main task is to figure out for ourselves what exactly it is that I'm doing right now, am I just putting this off for later, just putting it on the back burner? Or do I just want to do this task at the last minute because I know for sure that I'll get it done if I only have, say, 15 or 20 minutes left before the deadline? Or do I not want to do this task at all and it's just laziness? Or is it because I'm not in my element? So you have to look at each situation here individually.
I also think that a challenge for many people is remote work or remote learning. And then, maybe you'd want to get up earlier, but you realize, well, you can get up later and in principle still have enough time to get all that work done. So what advice can you give to people who work or study remotely and are already experiencing, these kinds of symptoms when you realize you'll have time to do it, so you can just lie in bed a little longer and not do anything for a little while?
I always tell this well-known phrase, which is that we live exactly the way we want to live. In general, a lot of people constantly beat themselves up for not doing the things they feel they should be doing. They think, I could have and should have woken up earlier. I could have prepared better. I could have gotten more done in general. So a person is constantly scolding themselves for what they supposedly didn't do, what they could have done but didn't. And here I always bring up this point, that we as people, we all always live exactly the way we want to live. If we want to sleep until 11 o'clock, it means that we want to sleep until 11 o'clock. If we want to watch Netflix, it means that we want to watch Netflix. You don't need to look for a double or triple meaning where there isn't one. We all live the life that we want to live. If for me, Netflix, a long sleep, 4 hours of scrolling on social media are more important than my development, than learning English, than preparing a presentation, a public speech, preparing some work document, then it means that these momentary pleasures are more important to me than my work. This indicates that for me, living a life where I can sleep in, eat a lot of junk food, and watch TV shows, it's much more important to maintain that kind of lifestyle than to have any career prospects. And to go around telling everyone else, oh, I'd love to build a career, I'd love to build a business, oh, I'd love to have a great body, but I just can't seem to do it. That's self-deception. You are succeeding, you just don't want this. If you honestly tell yourself, I'm fine with how I look, I'm fine with having extra pounds, I'm fine with not developing myself, I'm fine with spending 4 hours a day on my phone, I'm fine with that. At least that's honest. You're not lying to yourself. And so then you won't have this constant internal conflict of, oh, I spent so much time on my phone, but during that time I was supposed to be doing something useful, but you didn't want to do it. If you wanted to do it, you would have done it. And so we all live the way we want to live. Here's a very important remark. I'm not talking about people who are in certain difficult circumstances right now. I'm not talking about soldiers in a trench. I'm not talking about a person who is in prison or a person who has a serious illness and is in the hospital. I'm talking about healthy civilians who can manage their own time themselves. And so for all these people, we all live the way we want to live. And when a person understands this, they won't have that internal, oh yes, if I had more time, more opportunities, I would live a different life then. You live the way you want to live.
You mentioned a bit earlier that when it comes to planning, many people believe that now is not the right time. What is your opinion on this specifically? How important is it to set clear plans and to have priorities and a vision for your future in general, even in the times we live in, even in the midst of war?
The main function of planning is not that everything will go according to your plan. You wrote down, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, and everything came together and you're like, it's great that I plan. I'm awesome. Planning, its main function is not that. When we plan to get to step number 6, we have to understand that there will be step 1, step 2, and at step 3, everything can go haywire. Some external events, internal events can start. A person will leave, someone will get sick, something will change, the product, a new law, something else. Anything can happen and your plan will go haywire. But because you have a general picture of where you want to go, and at the 3rd stage everything went haywire, you understand what the 4th, 5th, and 6th steps were supposed to be. You can still take a different path from the 3rd step, but try to get to the 4th step. And even if the 4th step has changed, you can try to get to the 5th step in a different way. So when we have some kind of plan for the future, when we have a vision, it's not a story about everything having to come together. It's a story about the general vector of my life. It has to move me somewhere, meaning I have to strive for something. Because a person who has no goals, a person who lives only for one day, a person who says, I don't want to plan anything because reality constantly corrects my plans. I don't want to have any dreams and goals because I planned something and then there was COVID. I planned something and then there was a war. I planned and then my parents got sick. I planned and then the company I worked for went bankrupt. So the main problem with planning isn't that everything has to come together perfectly. And that's why many people don't plan, because they think it all has to work out. The point of planning, its essence, is that when everything goes haywire, you'll know what next steps you can try to take. Maybe your plan will take twice as long as you would have liked. Maybe it will be much more difficult to get through than you wanted. But when you have an understanding of the next steps, you will feel some kind of progress. When you feel progress, you will feel happy. If you don't feel progress in your life, you won't feel happy. But when you're standing still, when you have no plans, when you don't plan anything and you just boast and go around telling everyone there's no point in planning anything, look at the external circumstances, I just live one day at a time. That's fine, but most likely your life will be an unhappy one. But when you have some plans and you're still adjusting them, giving some things up, and for some goals the path is 3 to 4 times more difficult and longer, but you are still moving. You will feel happy every single day because you will see the change from what was to what is. Compared to who you were yesterday, today you've learned something. You've moved forward a little, and your life today is different from what it was yesterday. And so this progress will give you a feeling of happiness and inspiration.